One of the most, some of the most controversial supplements available are various fat burner supplements, and I want to say from the onset that there's really no such thing as a fat burner supplement. In other words, there's no pill that you can take that's going to actually directly burn fat. What fat burner supplements do are basically they're adjunctive aids to diet and exercise. In other words, they'll stimulate certain processes in the body that help you to mobilize fat. In other words, help the lipocytes of fat cells release fat. And if you exercise and diet properly, they will help a little bit in burning fat. Some fat burners are more effective than other fat burners. Hopefully, I'm using a new microphone, by the way. I've had a couple of people complain that my built-in webcam microphone doesn't pick up my voice or whatever. So if you can't hear it with this microphone, then I'd suggest that you go to a otolaryngologist, whatever it is, a hearing specialist, because, buddy, you are deaf. But anyway, let's go into a couple of natural fat burners that actually will help you lose fat. They are not fat burners. They're better characterized as fat mobilizers. Some of them work by reducing fat absorption. Others increase metabolism. But they as I said, they're minor adjunctive aids. You can't depend on them. You can't take one of these fat burner supplements, sit around, not do any exercise, and think it's going to just burn fat off you. It doesn't do that. There is a substance that does that. It's not really a supplement. It's called DNP, dinitrophenol. I've written about it. I've talked about it. I consider it the most dangerous substance used in bodybuilding. And in the last couple of years, unfortunately, it's been sold on the internet as a fat burner. I'm not going to go into detail on DNP. I think I've done that in other videos. I'm going to write about it in my Applied Metabolics newsletter, but suffice to say, it's a very dangerous substance. It works by what they call chemically uncoupling oxidative phosphorylation, meaning that it interferes with the production of energy in cells, forcing your body to use large amounts of fat as a fuel. You can lose up to a half a pound of fat a day doing nothing on DNP. Actually, it's a little bit less than that, maybe 6 ounces. But the point is that it works it increases your metabolism to such an extent that if you take too much, you wind up dying. And the therapeutic amount and the amount that's toxic is the line between them is very slim. A lot of people have died using DNP, and I don't recommend it. But this is a substance that does actually burn fat doing nothing. You don't even have to exercise. Don't recommend it. It's extremely dangerous. As I said, a lot of people who have used it have died. A lot of them were not bodybuilders. They bought them over the internet. They followed the directions on how to use it. But unfortunately, in some people, it has a cumulative effect. It can accumulate in the body. And within about 3 days, it can reach toxic levels, which causes them to die, basically. But let's talk about some of the safer natural fat burners. One of the first one that comes to mind, and it is almost always included in commercial fat burner supplements, is caffeine. Caffeine is found in coffee, green tea, cocoa beans. It boosts your metabolism. It definitely raises your metabolism. I think I don't know the exact percentage, but it definitely raises your metabolism up to 16%. It can raise the metabolism 16% for about 1 to 2 hours. It peaks in the blood in about an hour, but it lasts for about 6 hours. The thing is, it seems to be, it doesn't work that well. We have very high fat levels. It doesn't work as well as a fat mobilizer compared to people that have lower body fat levels or leaner. The problem with caffeine is that your body can develop a tolerance to it. If you, for example, if you drink coffee every day, after a while you won't get as much of a fat burner effect, or fat mobilizing effect, I should say. Your body becomes tolerant. There's other studies that disagree with that. The way caffeine works is you have the adipocyte, the fat cell. Caffeine works by stimulating what they call catecholamines, which is norepinephrine and epinephrine. These are natural hormones in the body that once they're released, they interact with an enzyme on fat cells that causes the fat cells to release fat. The fat is broken down into fat is stored in fat cells as triglyceride, which is composed of 3 fatty acids attached to a glycerol backbone. When you take in caffeine and you get these catecholamine release, it stimulates hormone-sensitive lipase, which degrades the stored triglyceride in fat cells into its component free fatty acids and glycerol. The free fatty acids circulate around in the blood, and if you do something that will oxidize them, such as exercise, aerobics, or even a strict diet, the fatty acids will be oxidized. However, if you just take caffeine and don't do anything, the fatty acids will still be released, but they'll circulate around the blood, and then they'll go right back into the fat cells. It's called re-esterification. So you have to be active. Caffeine alone won't help you. Now, the amount of caffeine, according to research, the safe amount is up to 400 milligrams a day. That equals about 4 cups of coffee. A lot of the commercial fat burner supplements, I've seen caffeine. I've seen the amounts in these supplements ranging from 100 to 200 milligrams, which isn't bad, especially if it's combined with other substances that are known to affect fat mobilization. Another natural fat burner or fat mobilizer is green tea extract, which is a concentrated form of green tea. Green tea has caffeine, but it also has a polyphenol type of antioxidant called epigallocatechin gallate, or EGCG. And because of that, green tea has a fat mobilizing effect independent of its caffeine content. And when you combine caffeine with EGCG, you get an increase in a process called thermogenesis, which is the conversion of calories into heat. This also occurs in a special type of fat called brown adipose tissue. An analysis of 6 studies found that a combination of green tea extract and caffeine helped people burn 16% more fat compared to another group that took a placebo. In another study, scientists compared the effects of a placebo, caffeine, and combination of green tea and caffeine on burning fat. They discovered that the combination of green tea and caffeine burned roughly 65 more calories per day than caffeine alone, and 80 more calories than the placebo, which is evidence that green tea exerts an independent effect on fat mobilization besides its caffeine content. So caffeine is not that potent a fat mobilizer, but it does seem to help. It does seem to help a little bit. There's some people have a genetic, it's what they call a polymorphism, genetic mutation, if you want to call it, or difference, where when they take green tea, concentrated green tea supplements, it tends to cause liver damage. Some people, it's caused liver damage to the extent where they've had to undergo liver transplants. This happens with, believe it or not, it's more related to green tea extract supplements than green tea itself. If you take the green tea with food, there's much less of a chance of it being liver toxic. If you take it, with a glass of water, some people, like I say, will have adverse liver effects. If you feel like it's happening to you, you can have a lab test done, what they call a liver panel. If the liver enzymes are up, it's probably best to discontinue green tea. But other than that, it's fairly safe. Protein powder itself can be considered kind of a natural fat mobilizer because the protein intake boosts metabolism, and it also helps to increase satiety. In other words, it lowers your appetite, which of course means you'll ingest less calories, which is conducive to burning more fat. A study involving 16 overweight subjects found that a high-protein diet was twice as effective as a moderate protein diet in burning fat. Protein it can curb your appetite by increasing levels of hormones that make you feel full. These include glucagon-like peptide 1, cholecystokinin, and peptide YY. All of these work. They give you this feeling that you're full, so you'll again eat less, and by eating less, you're taking less calories. You'll lose body fat, and they also these gut peptides work by reducing levels of another protein called ghrelin, which is produced in the gut and elsewhere. Ghrelin is produced. What it does is it's the most appetite-stimulating chemical in the body or substance in the body. Ghrelin, when you eat a meal, ghrelin levels drop like crazy. They go all the way down, and the ghrelin levels gradually build up in the hours between a meal, and this causes you to get hungry and want to eat. It's nature's way of getting you to eat. So, a high-protein diet will help control ghrelin, make it easier to stay on a diet. Another possible substance that will help with body fat reduction is soluble fiber. Soluble fiber. There's two types of fiber. There's insoluble fiber. Example would be bran, certain vegetables, and then soluble fiber is found mainly in fruits, oatmeal, and legumes. Soluble fiber absorbs water in the digestive tract, and it forms like a viscous-like, gel-like substance. They found that soluble fiber, if you ingest it with a meal, it'll do two things. It'll lower your appetite, making you want to eat less food. And again, when you're taking in less calories, you're going to lose body fat, and also it will increase the levels of those same gut peptides that eating protein does. And also, and this is really interesting, soluble fiber. If you take in what they call a high glycemic carbohydrate, which is like a refined carbohydrate, or any type of natural carbohydrate like certain fruits or potatoes when eaten alone, they hit your body really hard because like the starch in potatoes is very rapidly digested, amylopectin I believe it's called, and it has a very high glycemic index, meaning that the carbohydrate is converted into glucose very rapidly, and it stimulates an insulin response. A problem with insulin is when you consume excess calories, insulin takes those calories, basically converts them into fat. Now, what they found is when you take a high glycemic index carbohydrate and ingest it with soluble fiber, it lowers the glycemic index way down. So you get much less of an insulin response, which means that you'll also have much less of a body fat increase effect. So the soluble fiber, if you don't like to, you could also take soluble fiber. You could take it in supplement form. Psyllium seed is one of them. Hydrolyzed guar gum, apple pectin powder. These are all soluble fibers. You can mix it in. I take some of that stuff. I mix it in sugar-free Kool-Aid. When you're taking soluble fiber powder, you have to take a lot of liquid with it for it to work properly. I take about as much as 8 to 12 ounces of liquid when I take these soluble fiber powders. But they actually do really reduce your appetite. You'll find it, especially if you take it before a meal. Another famous fat mobilizer is Yohimbine. Yohimbine is found in the bark of a tree that grows in Central and Western Africa. It was originally considered an aphrodisiac. It was sold in drug form under the trade name Yacon. Don't ask me why, but it works by inhibiting what they call alpha-2 adrenic receptors. These basically, by doing that, it actually stimulates the breakdown of fat, particularly in areas of the body that are rich in alpha-2 adrenic receptors. For example, women who have they store fat in their butt, their hips, and their upper thighs, and it's very hard for them to lose fat in those areas because they have a preponderance of alpha-2 adrenic receptors, which work with estrogen to maintain fat in that area. The reason why it's so hard for women to burn fat in that area, it's called sex-specific fat. The human body evolved to, especially the female body, to store fat in those areas as an emergency fuel source in case they get pregnant, to support a pregnancy to keep human civilization going. So even though women don't like fat in those areas, it's there basically to perpetuate the human species. However, there are some studies showing that Yohimbine, by blocking alpha-2 adrenic receptors, can allow women to tap into that lower body fat. Also, it will also work for men. There was a study that involved 20 elite soccer players who took 10 milligrams of Yohimbine twice daily, and it helped them shed 2.2% of their body fat on average in only 3 weeks. These athletes were lean, so 2.2% reduction in body fat is pretty significant. Let me turn off this phone because it's making noises. Hold on one second. Anyway, so Yohimbine, the thing to remember about Yohimbine, it has to be taken on an empty stomach. You can't have any caffeine with it. You can't have any food with it. It starts to work in about half hour. If you take it before exercise on an empty stomach, it probably will help you actually burn a little bit extra fat. So I should also point out, though, that one side effect of Yohimbine is that it can cause a lot of anxiety in some people to the point where they get panic attacks. Sometimes some people get nausea. Some people even get high blood pressure after using Yohimbine. I remember speaking to a martial artist a couple of years ago who told me he had to go to an emergency room after taking Yohimbine. He was using it to try and drop a little body fat, and it caused some problems. So before I leave off, I not so much natural, but I just want to mention the greatest fat burning or fat mobilization combination ever produced was a combination of a substance called ephedrine, which was derived from a natural herb called ma wang, Chinese herb. Ephedrine was originally combined with caffeine and aspirin. Later on, they found out the aspirin wasn't necessary for caffeine, for the ephedrine caffeine to work. So basically, it was ephedrine and caffeine. It involved taking about 25 milligrams of ephedrine, about 200 milligrams of caffeine, and this really, really worked for an excellent fat, the best fat burner combination ever produced. Unfortunately, ephedrine worked by also stimulating catecholamines. Some people who had pre-existing high blood pressure, it raised their blood pressure. Some people had some problems, but generally, if you stayed within that dosage range, it was safe. I used it myself. I know hundreds of others who used it with no problems whatsoever. Ephedrine helped you to lose body fat through several mechanisms. First was the catecholamine release, and it also had an appetite suppressant effect, and it even actually stimulated the conversion of inactive T4 thyroid hormone into T5, and that particular aspect of ephedrine remained as long as you took it. In other words, some of the catecholamine effect would wear off after a while, just like caffeine, it wears off in caffeine, but the thyroid effect of ephedrine and caffeine never wore off. And caffeine, of course, I mentioned earlier, is a fat mobilizer. The combination was tremendous. Why is it not available? It is available. If you get over the internet, you could still get ephedrine, but it was banned by the United States government because of a lot of complaints were sent to the FDA. Most of these complaints were bogus. They were in the same type of system that is currently used to report COVID-19 side effects. This is a unverified database where anybody could report a side effect without any verification whatsoever. In other words, you could say that just like they're saying with COVID, with the COVID vaccine, people are saying that the COVID vaccine caused their dog to die and ridiculous stuff. And people were saying that ephedrine caused heart attacks and stroke. It never did. If you stay, unless you had a predisposition, an existing cardiovascular problem like heart disease or high blood pressure, ephedrine was safe. The real reason why it was taken off the market was because of the very fact that it was too effective. And drug companies complained to the FDA. Little known fact about the FDA is the FDA, which stands for Food and Drug Administration. They were established in about 1937, and the charter of the FDA says one of the main reasons for the FDA is to protect and promote pharmaceutical companies. So when the drug companies complained that ephedrine was killing their fat loss pills or the diet pill business, the FDA, went to that database and used it as evidence to remove ephedrine off the market, and it was always bogus right from the start. But I just thought I'd mention that because ephedrine, caffeine, worked better than any of the substances I already talked about. But I will finish off by saying that there's no getting around the fact that you have to diet. If you really want to lose weight, you have to diet. And you do have to really, I'm not saying count calories, but you have to be careful of how many calories you take in. You have to consume less calories than you burn. Some people are more sensitive to carbohydrates, including myself. Some people are more sensitive to carbohydrates than others. They have to also be careful of carbohydrate intake. I've said this in previous videos. When I was a bodybuilder, the only diets that I really lost significant amounts of fat on were low-carb diets. I tried every type of diet, low-fat, high-carb, low-calorie, you name it. None of them worked because I couldn't stay on them. They made me starve, and I felt weak on them. When I went on the low-carb, high-protein diet, it was a little tough for the first couple of weeks. Once I got acclimated to it, the fat came off like you couldn't believe. I could see my waist getting smaller from week to week. So if you're insulin insensitive, meaning that if you have blood glucose fluctuations, tend to have higher blood glucose levels, when you ingest carbohydrates, you're probably insulin insensitive. A low carbohydrate diet would be the best diet for you. So that's about it, really. So if you want to have more information on nutrition, exercise science, anti-aging research you can use today, fat loss, effective fat loss techniques, ergogenic aids, hormonal therapy, subscribe today to my Applied Metabolics newsletter, www.appliedmetabolics.com. When you apply, I'll send you I'll send you an invitation to join my private Applied Metabolics Facebook page, where each day I post new information on medicine, exercise science, and general health. I also have an email portal on my Applied Metabolics website where current subscribers can send me short questions about anything they might have read in Applied Metabolics or any other short question that comes to mind. So Applied Metabolics is 30 to 45 pages every month. It's like getting a monthly ebook. The topics I discuss are not generally discussed anywhere on the internet. I also include a lot of information that you won't find available anywhere else. I also include my nearly 60 years of actual experience in the gym and in studying nutrition and exercise science for all these years, and a level of experience that I don't believe could be matched by anybody. So subscribe today, www.appliedmetabolics.com. And if you want to have the best friend you ever have, he's making an appearance now. Bruno, he's been sitting here the whole time because if I don't sit him in my lap, he barks and you won't be able to hear anything. Say hello to everybody, Bruno. Bruno. Okay, there he is. That's Bruno the Wonder Dog. He's Wonder Dog because he's about 19 years old. He can't see, can't hear, but he still moves around pretty good. So thank you for listening. Take care.